Ah, well. Look who wandered in. You, the quiet one. The one they thought they had figured out. Yeah, you. The one who used to bite back. The one who used to crack, fold, explode, scream, cry, beg, explain. Not anymore. You came in here dragging your silence behind you like a royal cloak, didn't you? Not loud, not dramatic, not even bitter. Just still. It's funny, isn't it? The way people only notice your growth once you stop announcing it. Once you stop performing strength and start living it. Oof, that stings, huh? For them, not you. Because you made peace with not being understood. You made a home inside your own restraint. And baby, that's terrifying to people who only know how to weaponize chaos. You didn't just walk away. You ascended, and you didn't even slam the door. You just vanished with that eerie kind of grace that makes people uncomfortable. They were waiting for the meltdown. They were hungry for the show. They baited the hook, pulled the strings, poked the bear. But you? Oh, you didn't growl. You didn't roar. You just smiled. That tight, calm, spine-chilling smile that says, I've already buried the old me, and you're next if you keep poking. What did you do, huh? You kept your hands clean. You didn't throw dirt, didn't match energy, didn't match the volume, didn't lower the bar. You watched them crumble under the weight of their own projection while you just kept depth ascending. How deliciously twisted is that? Your growth didn't shout. It haunted. Because see, when a person who used to react starts sitting in silence, oh, the whole room gets nervous. I can see it. That version of you that used to be addicted to defending yourself. That version of you that couldn't stand the sound of being misunderstood. You'd over-explain, over-give, over-prove. Burnt yourself to keep people warm. People who were just waiting to see you melt. But then, something snapped. Not loudly, not all at once, no. It was quiet. It was surgical. You outgrew the cage and left the door wide open behind you. And guess what? They stayed. Because people like that. They don't want healing. They want a host. And you? You're done being fed on? You ever notice how your silence echoed louder than your scream ever could? You ever notice how your refusal to engage was mistaken for weakness? Until it left them pacing, restless, paranoid, haunted by what you didn't say. That's the part that drives them insane. Not your words, your absence, not your fire, your ice, not the noise you made. The fact that you made none at all. And ooh, that burns, doesn't it? Because when someone's used to having control over your triggers, and then suddenly, click, nothing happens. No explosion, no tears, no begging. Just you, watching. Oh baby, that's power. But let me tell you what most don't see. It wasn't easy, was it? That silence wasn't soft. That silence wasn't passive. It was forged through betrayal, through humiliation, through nights where your fists were clenched so tight, your palms bled. Because you wanted to react. You wanted to tear it all down. You wanted to make them feel just a fraction of what you swallowed. But instead, you chose peace. Not because it was easy, but because you were tired. Tired of breaking your own spirit just to prove you had one. And that's where your real growth started. It wasn't when you blocked them or walked away. It was when you stopped needing them to know why, stopped needing closure, stopped needing revenge, stopped needing validation. They say healing is soft. Nah, healing is savage. Healing is silence that slices deeper than 1,000 words ever could. Healing is becoming so unrecognizable to your old patterns that even your demons can't find you anymore. That's what you've become, haven't you? Unrecognizable, not to the world, to you. To the you who used to chase, fix, prove, shrink. And here's the kicker. They think your silence is emptiness. They think your silence is weakness. They think your silence is submission. Let them think. Because they're not hearing silence. They're hearing the funeral music of the version of you they once controlled. It's strange, isn't it? How when you stop performing pain for an audience, the whole stage goes cold. Their applause dies out. Their eyes wander. Their mouths twist. They don't know what to do with someone who won't give them a script anymore. They're addicted to chaos, to your outbursts, to the old version of you who danced on command. And then one day, you stop dancing. You just stand there, perfectly still, and you watch them realize they're not the puppeteer. There's a pulse under your skin right now. It's not rage. It's not fear. It's something darker and purer. It's composure sharpened like a blade. It's that electricity that lives in someone who has learned restraint the hard way. And when you carry that energy, people feel it in their bones before you even open your mouth. They feel it in the quiet between your breaths. They feel it when you walk into a room and nothing about you begs to be seen, but everything about you demands to be noticed. The silence you're wearing isn't empty. It's loaded. It's filled with every boundary you built in the dark. Every night you bit your tongue until it bled. Every secret you never told. Every scream you swallowed whole. That's why your silence hums like an engine. That's why it vibrates. That's why people flinch when they're near it. They're not scared of you. They're scared of the mirror you're holding up to them. Because your growth isn't a performance. It's a reflection of what they never did for themselves. And the power you've been carrying, it's not the cartoon kind. It's not a mask or a costume. It's the kind of power that can sit still and still rearrange a whole room. The kind of power that turns down a fight without losing an ounce of dominance. The kind of power that speaks in eyes and gestures, not in paragraphs. It's like standing in a storm, but your hair doesn't move. It's like a lion lying down with its teeth still out. They keep testing you with their little jabs, their little games, their little invitations back into the mess. They send you bait wrapped in nostalgia. They press the same old buttons. They whisper your name like it's still a spell. And yet nothing happens. No reaction, no explosion, just silence that echoes like a gunshot. And that's when it starts to dawn on them. They're not up against the same creature anymore. Every time you stay silent instead of retaliating, a part of you grows even sharper. Every time you choose composure over chaos, your aura darkens in the best way. Not dark like evil, dark like depth, dark like the ocean at midnight, dark like velvet, like mystery, like power that doesn't need a spotlight. People don't know what to do with that kind of presence. They're used to bright, messy, screaming power. They're not used to someone whose stillness could break glass. And while they're out there gossiping about the version of you they used to know, you're outgrowing skin after skin like a snake. You're slipping through old cages without even rattling the bars. You're walking past old traps like they're museum exhibits. Your silence is your camouflage. Your power is your shadow. Your growth is the ghost that lingers after you leave. In that silence, there's a strange kind of beauty. It's not soft. It's not polite. It's the beauty of self-mastery. It's the beauty of someone who has learned that not every battle deserves a witness, and not every insult deserves an answer. It's the beauty of someone who has stopped trying to convince the world and started training their own heartbeat. And that beauty terrifies people who feed on noise. Because they can't take it from you, they can't provoke it out of you, they can't even name it. You stand there and you watch their confusion grow. You watch them whisper. You watch them check their phones. You watch them stare at you like you're a painting they don't understand. Because you're not the person they built in their heads anymore. You're something else entirely. Something they can't predict, can't decode, can't drag down. And while they're scrambling for the old script, you're rewriting yourself word by word without even picking up a pen. And in that rewrite, you become untouchable. Not in the way of arrogance, but in the way of stillness. The way a mountain is untouchable. The way a shadow is untouchable. The way silence is untouchable. That's the kind of power they feel radiating from you now. That's the kind of growth they're staring at with wide eyes. Your silence isn't retreat. It's strategy. It's rebirth. It's you stepping back just enough to let the old noise collapse under its own weight. It's you holding your crown steady without needing an audience to clap. It's you turning your pain into a throne that nobody else can sit on. And as you sit there, still, steady, quiet, powerful, everything in the room bends around you without you lifting a finger. They don't say it out loud, but you can feel it. The shift, the hesitation in their voice when they speak your name, the second guessing in their eyes when they bring you up. They used to say, "You've changed," like it was an accusation, like evolution was a crime. But they don't say that anymore. Now they just pause, stare, wonder, because something in you doesn't play by their rules anymore. Your energy, it doesn't chase, it doesn't beg, it doesn't even flinch, it waits. Not for them, for nothing, because you've arrived. You're not the version of you they used to corner with guilt. You're not the one who used to explain your heart like it was a courtroom confession. You're not bending over backwards just to be tolerated anymore. You're not throwing pearls into the mud hoping someone recognizes them as valuable. You're not performing peace. You became it. And that, my dear, is terrifying to people who only know how to connect through chaos. They were banking on you staying reactive. They had your patterns memorized. Push this button, you cry. Say this word, you scream. Give it time, you come running back. But the program has changed. They hit the button, and nothing happens. They look at the screen, and it's just static. They shout into the old wound, and it doesn't echo anymore. That's not healing. That's arrival. Because somewhere in your silence you realized the real enemy wasn't them. It was the version of you that needed them to see you a certain way. That needed their apology, their approval, their attention. And that version, buried deep, with flowers growing on top. Your silence is sacred now. Not because you don't have words, but because you finally learned which people aren't worth them. You're not out here with a bullhorn trying to broadcast your worth. You're sitting back, crown tilted, watching people talk themselves in circles, trying to figure out what you're thinking. And the truth is, you're not thinking about them at all. They're still stuck in a scene you left 5 chapters ago. They're still playing roles in a story you outgrew mid-sentence. They think you're mysterious. You're not. You're just done explaining yourself to people who didn't even read the first page. Your silence is dripping in intent. Every quiet breath is laced with discipline. Every moment you could have snapped but didn't. That's a brick in the empire you're building. They don't see that part. They just see the calm and assume it was easy. They see the grace and assume you've never tasted rage. They see the growth and assume you just woke up lucky. But we both know what you crawled through. We both know what it took to sit in front of the fire without reaching for water. We both know how hard it was to shut your mouth when every part of you wanted to defend. We both know you weren't silent because you had nothing to say. You were silent because saying it wouldn't have changed anything. And silence let you keep your power intact. Because that's what they really wanted, wasn't it? Not closure, not truth, control, to yank you out of character, to make you loud again, to make you feel small again, to remind you of the old version of you who would have shattered by now. But you didn't shatter, you reshaped. And with every quiet refusal, you built something. A wall, maybe, but not one of bitterness, one of standards, one of clarity, one of unapologetic solitude. Because you stopped waiting for people to understand your depth. You became the ocean and let them drown in the shallow end. There's something surgical about the way you removed yourself. No fight, no scene, no grand finale. Just silence, sharp enough to slice through every invisible chain they thought still bound you. And you didn't even flinch. That's what lingers in their mind. Not the goodbye. The precision. People think silence is passive. They don't understand the discipline it takes to sit with a mouthful of truth and not spit it just to satisfy the ego. They don't understand what it costs to know everything. Every secret, every fake smile, every petty attempt to trigger you. And still, say nothing. Not because you're weak, because you're past it. They keep checking in, testing, prodding like lab rats poking a sleeping lion. They call it curiosity, but deep down, it's guilt dressed in interest. It's shame in disguise. They're hoping for a reaction, any flicker of the old instability, just to soothe their conscience. But your silence doesn't scratch their itch. It burns, because it confirms what they feared most. You outgrew the version of you they could manipulate. It's wild how they treated you like noise when you spoke. But suddenly you go quiet, and it's deafening. They can't sleep, can't think, can't settle. Because your silence didn't just remove your voice. It removed their power. And that kind of loss doesn't come with an announcement. It doesn't come with fireworks. It creeps in late at night. In the empty space where your reaction used to live. In the blank screen where your paragraph-long messages used to appear. In the unread notifications that never come. You became a ghost before they realized they'd killed something sacred. What they don't see is that your silence is stitched together with every time you were talked over. Every time your vulnerability was met with mockery. Every time you showed up with full heart and left with it bleeding. You didn't become quiet overnight. You were carved into it, one betrayal at a time, one disappointment deeper than the last, until the only sound left was your own breath in the dark. But you learned something in that darkness, didn't you? You learned how to hear yourself think. You learned how to sit with the raw, ugly truth of your own patterns. You learned how to stop gaslighting yourself just to preserve someone else's comfort. You learned how to be enough, even with nobody clapping. And that's the kind of growth they'll never understand. The kind that doesn't fit in an Instagram quote or a therapist's chair. It's primal. It's blood deep. It's spiritual warfare inside your own chest. The silence you carry now. It's not silence at all. It's language. It speaks things only the wounded can understand. It says, I know who I am without your validation. I see through the performance. I don't need to prove the truth. I am the truth. And that kind of energy doesn't beg for space. It creates it. It shifts rooms. It sets off alarms in people who live off attention. They look at you like you're heartless. Because you don't chase. Because you don't explain. Because you don't fold under the pressure to forgive without repair. But your silence isn't cold. It's calculated. It's a boundary dressed in velvet. It's love redirected inward. It's power that doesn't roar anymore, because it doesn't have to. You're not a fighter anymore, because you don't need to prove you can win. You are the war. You're not loud, because you don't need volume to be heard. You carry gravity now. You carry weight, and they feel it in every room you don't enter, in every call you don't answer, in every version of you they can't reach anymore. There's a kind of pain in growing past people who expected you to stay broken. But there's also liberation, because once you've sat in the ashes of your old self and watched your neediness burn, once you've swallowed every last apology you were never given, once you've rebuilt your identity from nothing but silence and spine, there's no going back. You stopped waiting for apologies that were never coming. You stopped explaining things to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped handing over the most sacred parts of your soul just to be half seen by people with fogged-up lenses. And somewhere in that silence, that deep, aching, echoing silence, you started remembering who the hell you were before they told you who to be. There's a stillness in you now that's mistaken for emptiness. But it's not hollow. It's heavy. It's ancient. It's made of every moment you were shattered and still chose to stand anyway. It's the kind of stillness you find at the bottom of the ocean. Calm, yes, but lethal. That's what they feel when they look at you now. That pressure, that depth, that quiet that holds storms. They wonder why you don't come around anymore, why you don't argue, why you don't bite back, why your name has turned into a rumor, because they're still living in the version of reality where access to you was guaranteed, where your energy was a resource they could consume, mock, and manipulate. But that door doesn't even exist anymore. You didn't close it. You demolished it and planted wildflowers in the rubble. You don't even want revenge. That's what's unsettling. You don't want closure. You don't want to win. You just disappeared into yourself and came back unrecognizable. And people hate what they can't categorize. You used to be predictable. You used to have triggers. Now you're a mirror. They speak, and all they see is their own reflection staring back, unimpressed. It's always the ones who try to break you that end up haunted by the pieces, because they thought silence meant defeat. They thought silence meant guilt. But your silence, it's a judgment. It's the ultimate sentence. It says, you're not worth the words. It says, my time is expensive, and you can't afford me. It says, I've built peace, and you're the kind of noise I no longer invite inside. They used to have access to your chaos. Now all they get is absence. And nothing messes with someone's mind like not being able to predict how you'll respond. Because you don't. They post their little jabs. They throw their little tantrums. They send their little signals. And your energy doesn't even blink. You're not just ignoring them. You're operating on a whole new frequency. One they were never built to reach. You became dangerous when you stopped trying to be liked. You became magnetic when you stopped trying to prove. You became free the moment you stopped begging people to see what was always obvious. That's why your silence makes noise. Because it's not just absence, it's declaration. It says, I'm not who you used to know. It says, I don't bleed from the same wounds anymore. It says, you lost access to a version of me I'll never resurrect. And there's a grief in that. But it's not yours. It's theirs. They grieve your presence while pretending you never mattered. They grieve your softness while pretending they never needed it. They grieve the chance to hurt you again, but dress it up as indifference. That's the game they play.